So that's a quick look at retrofit analysis in BEopt. The next area that I want to talk about is incentives. This is something that we have added as part of the CSI RD&D project. And particularly what we've added is a set of buttons on the site screen to evaluate PV incentives and efficiency incentives. When you click the button for PV incentives, you get a screen like this where you can evaluate both tax credits and or rebates for a number of different entities. You can look at federal, state, utility, or other entities, so you can organize your tax credits and rebates by where they come from. And then BEopt has a lot of flexibility to describe, so we're looking at PV incentives, so you can get an upfront PV incentive in a fixed amount, percent of capital cost, it can be a capacity-based dollar per watt value. You can even do incentives based on simulated performance of the PV system. You can select multiple of these, so you can have combinations. You can have a capacity-based and a fixed amount incentive. And you can even define tiers for the various incentives so that you have $1 per watt up until a certain size PV system, and then a larger dollar per watt for increasing PV system. And finally, there's some maximum constraints here that you can specify. So let's just go through a couple examples. This is one that BEopt ships with for all analysis, even outside of California. This is the federal tax credit that's 30% of capital cost. This is the way that you would define such an incentive in BEopt. Here we have an example of a CSI capacity-based incentive for the state of California. The actual incentive is 20 cents a watt AC. The specification in BEopt is DC, so we have a note here that you should assume a D-rate factor of 0.77, and that's how we come up with this 15.4 cents per watt capacity-based incentive. And here's another example also of the CSI rebate program for their performance-based approach. So this would be where you get 3 cents a kilowatt hour. This is kilowatt hours produced by your PV system for an incentive term of 5 years. And BEopt also has the flexibility to put in an escalation rate if one exists. So a lot of flexibility here to define various PV incentives, either current PV incentives or to design new types of incentives. And then here is a look at whole house efficiency incentives. So what we decided to do for this project is to focus on whole house efficiency packages incentives. We recognize there's a lot of measure-by-measure incentive programs out there in the country, and we decided to focus our effort and target whole house efficiency packages as being particularly of interest as we push towards zero net energy buildings. So this is the screen that you would get for the whole house efficiency incentive specification. It's very similar to what you see for the PV incentives in terms of the flexibility. Again, fixed amount, percent of capital cost, performance-based tiers, and so on. And so here's an example. This time we're looking at the Savings by Design program in California, just as an example. So we can see here we have a performance-based incentive with tiers. And there's a little graph here demonstrating how this works. So for starting at 10% electricity savings, so the actual performance-based incentive is tied to your energy efficiency electricity savings. And so starting at 10%, you could get 10 cents per kilowatt hour. That then ramps up to the next tier, which starts at 30% energy efficiency electricity savings, and that is then at 30 cents per kilowatt hour. And so that's what's reflected here in this graph. And then finally, the rebate also has a max amount of $4,000. So this is an example of how you would specify that type of whole house efficiency incentive.